Hello, welcome to your weekly hormone chat. Today, we're going to be talking about the stages of perimenopause, and maybe the word perimenopause in general, that itself is kind of new to you. Maybe you were familiar with menopause, but this whole peri thing, you're still learning. And then, now to actually hear there's 4 phases of perimenopause. It's pretty interesting information. So, what we want to do is help you answer the question of, am I in perimenopause? Is this what I'm going through? Is this causing my mood changes? Is this causing my weight gain? Is this, and again, this being perimenopause, is this causing my poor sleep, my fatigue, all of those things? So, we're going to go through the 4 phases, talk about what they look like, what they feel like, to help you figure out if you're in one of these phases and to help you prepare so you kind of know what's coming next. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to share my screen with you guys. So let me do that. Let me open up what I want to share. That will help. And okay, bear with me. Where did it go? I just had it up. Weird. Okay. Well, oh yes, here we are. All right. So what this depicts, this is something that I share with my one-on-one clients. But I am sharing it with you to help us have this discussion. Okay. So now you have this up on your screen here. It says the stages of perimenopause. And so this has been broken down by leading experts in this area. So the first phase is considered very early perimenopause. So this is actually the phase where your periods might be regular. Might still be regular. So this is the most kind of confusing phase for people because your perimenopause is so early on, you don't yet have these period changes. So you don't have any physical signs or manifestations saying, yep, this is what's happening. However, even though you don't see or experience those changes yet on the outside, your hormones are already changing on the inside when we're in this phase. So, because what is happening initially in very early perimenopause is your progesterone starts to decline. And this is something that we talk about a lot, kind of those 2 big changes. When you reach perimenopause, your progesterone drops. This is the first thing that happens, like we're seeing here. And then next, we'll move into the next phase so you know what happens next. But at this point, your progesterone is decreasing. So that is the very first thing that starts happening when you reach this change. Okay, progesterone is made by your ovaries. So some really common symptoms at this time are anxiety and difficulty sleeping. And, we refer to progesterone as your natural Xanax. And the reason for that being that progesterone is very calming, it's very soothing to our bodies. Progesterone helps us stay even keeled during the day. It helps us fall asleep at night and stay asleep. So it has all these really good calming benefits. So it makes sense that when your progesterone starts to decrease in very early perimenopause, some of the first things you experience are feeling more tension, just not sleeping as well, feeling anxious. Some women develop heart palpitations or, racing hearts. They even wake up at night with a racing heart. That's because your progesterone is starting to drop. Weight gain can also start to develop at this point in time, and headaches are another thing that's really common. All right. So, in total, all 4 of these stages of perimenopause can last up to 10 years. Okay. So it differs from person to person. This very early perimenopause might last 6 months, it might last 4 years, it might last longer than 4 years. So, this is again the phase where it's most tricky to tell, am I in perimenopause or not? This is where most women fall into in their early 40s, but this can happen as young as your late 30s. Okay, so then we move into what's called our early perimenopause transition. So stage 2, basically. At this point in time, your period may start to be inconsistent. So you might start to see some changes in flow. Um, if your periods are heavy all of a sudden and they've never been heavy historically, that's a sign that you may have reached perimenopause. And the flip side is also true. Your periods might get lighter than usual. At this point in time, a lot of women still fall into like a 26 to 28 day window for cycles. So timeline wise, they're still fairly regular. We just often see them heavier is really common and sometimes lighter, but your cycle might start to vary in length at this time. So you might start to push down to like 24, 25 days, or you might space out a little longer. And common symptoms during this phase, this is where we move into some more of the mood changes, right? So let's say maybe you're that person right now who's in very early perimenopause. Your periods are still regular. Nothing's different there, but maybe you're just feeling more anxious. So something to watch for would be, do you start to have more mood changes? Does the anxiety transition into irritability, crying easily, being emotional, feeling like you're on that emotional roller coaster? This often happens as we move into that second phase of perimenopause. Headaches, again, are really common. And then this is where we also can start to see some of those more traditional symptoms we think of, like night sweats, come into play. And at this phase, your progesterone is still decreasing. That hasn't stopped. But at this point, your estrogen starts fluctuating as well. So this is when we go on to that second part where, remember, we said progesterone is the first thing that changes, it goes down. Estrogen, our other female hormone, starts to kind of do this during this phase. And this is what is mostly linked to these mood changes and the mood instability. And this can last in some women 2 to 3 years again. All right. So just some things to think about if you're having more of these types of symptoms. And if you've moved into this point, inconsistent cycles, night sweats, at this point, we pretty much know for sure you're in perimenopause. And then we go into the later perimenopause transition. So here, your cycle lengths can start to vary drastically. You can go up to 60 days between periods. So this is when you get to the point where you're like, gosh, when did I have my last period? Man, I must be getting pretty close to menopause because I feel like I haven't had one in a while. So if you've been saying those things, you've moved into this late perimenopause transition and towards later menopause. Okay, so this is when your cycle length really starts to space out. And your symptoms are often the worst during this phase. So this is when your estrogen is fluctuating, but it does start to decline some as well. So your estrogen kind of starts up here throughout perimenopause. It does a wibble wobble up and down all over the place, and then it stabilizes out at a new norm. This new norm is not the same as your pre menopausal estrogen. Okay, so it is lower, but you do adjust to that new norm. So, but at this point, it's fluctuating and it's working its way down. This is when women who experience hard perimenopauses, this is when our night sweats, our hot flashes is full blown. This is when the weight gain really starts to tack on. So if you haven't reached this point yet and you are having some symptoms of perimenopause, now's a good time to really work on your hormones and getting them in line, because some perimenopause symptoms are normal. So by that, I mean, having maybe 1 or 2 mild hot flashes a week, it doesn't really bother you that much. That's normal. That, I would say if it's not interfering with your quality of life and your daily functioning, I would consider it normal. That's subjective though, of course, because some people can tolerate more things than others. But, again, I would think of, is it prohibiting you from doing things? Are your symptoms interfering with your sleep, which then leaves you exhausted and you're not able to function? Those types of things. That's when we've crossed a line and we need to really dig into your hormones and see what's going on because something's not right. Your symptoms shouldn't be that bad that it's making your life miserable right now. Okay, so as I was saying, if you're not at this late perimenopause transition yet, but you do have symptoms, now is a good time because we don't want you getting to that point where your 40s or this perimenopause transition is just awful for you. Okay. And then we move into our last phase, which is late perimenopause. This is when your cycle length has really spaced out to where it's like you get one, then another one you get, 3 to 4 months later, then you might get another one 5 months later, you might get another one 10 months later. This is that stretch where the home stretch, like I said here, this is that home stretch where you feel like I'm done having periods. I haven't had one in 11 months. And then it's like 11 months and 2 weeks and you get a period. So that means you have not officially reached menopause yet. You have reached menopause when you have gone 12 months without a period. Until you have reached this 12 months of no period mark, you haven't reached menopause. So if you're in that window of, I get one twice a year, then you're definitely in that late perimenopause transition and you are almost there. And at this point, your estrogen is not quite fluctuating. It's starting to settle down and get closer to its new norm. Your progesterone is dropped and it's not going up again. Our progesterone is done at this phase of life. And we start to settle into our postmenopausal body. If you've reached late perimenopause and you feel great and you have never had any of these symptoms, then congratulations, you have crossed that perimenopause threshold, and there's a good chance you won't have a lot more symptoms, if any. Rarely do I talk with a woman who had zero perimenopausal symptoms and then got like right to that menopause home stretch or even crossed that menopausal threshold and started to have symptoms. Usually they are showing their face before that. But they do get worse and worse if you don't address them. So at this point, again, after 12 months, you've reached menopause. That is a point in time. It's not a time period. Menopause is a point in time that you have achieved. Congratulations. And after that, you are now post-menopause. So I hope that helps you better understand where you may be on this spectrum, what to expect as you move forward across this spectrum. Some women go through all of perimenopause and never really have many hormonal symptoms. That's true. That's out there. Most of us don't. Most of us do have some hormonal symptoms. And it's just, again, at what point do you take action? Because you don't have to feel miserable in perimenopause. If your symptoms are interfering with your day-to-day functioning, if you're just not happy with how you're feeling, you're not happy with your motivation, your energy level, you're not happy with how you feel in your body, those are signs that it's time to take action because there are a lot we can do to help you thrive in perimenopause and look and feel your absolute best. If you need guidance along the way, that is what we are here for. So thank you so much for joining us today. You guys know you can always go to my website and book a consultation so we can talk more specifically about you and your unique symptoms and needs while you're in this perimenopause transition. Have a great day. I'll talk to you next week.